And so this is a fat shoelace. I looked for one that's pretty big. And you could either stitch it together or, you can staple things together too, and then just cover it with tape. But what the advantage of this is it just slides on pretty easily. And you could take it, the patient could take it off when they wash their hands. And I think a good idea is to give people options. So maybe tell people about the tape, tell them about this, and they can switch around depending on what activity they're doing. Um, this is a splint that you see a lot for radial nerve injuries, and it's made out of thermoplastics. So this is just an alternative to that. I made it out of a detergent container, and it works pretty well. So again, for people who don't have access to thermoplastics. And one nice thing about this is I didn't create something else that's going to end up in the landfill. In fact, I took something out of the landfill, something that won't go in. This is so that was more of a static radial nerve palsy splint. And this is one that's a dynamic one. People don't like this one as much because it's higher profile. I like it because it's really functional. So I set out to make one out of materials that people might have in a developing country. So again, I used a detergent container and a coat hanger and just some loops, and works pretty well. Another option is to use neoprene, and you can cut the neoprene. Can you see my arrow if I do the arrow? Can you guys see that? Yeah. So again, neoprene's inexpensive. You can cut it, and then you use the tape. Um, well, anyway, you can iron on the tape, and so that's another alternative to thermoplastics. We see this hand pretty often. We see this hand in people who've had a stroke or a spinal cord injury or brachial plexus. And this hand doesn't have any of the intrinsics working. And so you can make a thermoplastic splint, but you can also just tape that, just do a kind of a figure eight tape. And again, you need to use not stretchy tape, so not like the kinesio tape. When you make it, I say you need to really exaggerate the flexion because these people will push out of it otherwise. So you really need to exaggerate it. This splint is for someone who has, again, something higher level like a spinal cord or brachial plexus. And then this is one for people who have the ulnar nerve palsy because, with the ulnar nerve, the I'm trying to get the tape off. So this hand doesn't have median or ulnar function, but for an ulnar nerve, they just claw in these digits because the lumbrical's intact in these two. And this is the thermoplastic alternative to that. Another alternative would be to just do rubber bands. Have a little sling and rubber bands that hook onto the watch to anti-claw. Remember whenever you pull that all the fingers, when they flex, they point to the tuberosity of the scaphoid. So that's where your pull is going to be. And if you do it yourself, your fingers don't pull straight down. They pull this way. When people have median nerve palsy, it's a pretty devastating thing to have. But among the problems that they have, they can't radially abduct. And so the main thing we want to do is maintain that web space while we're waiting for the nerve to come back. So this is just a real easy taping thing to help maintain that web space. There's a lot of buzz about relative motion orthosis, and I love them. I think they're great. And this is just a real easy taping way to tape for to make a radial nerve, I mean, a relative motion splint out of taping. And remember, the digit is supposed to be in approximately 15 degrees more flexion or extension in relationship to the other fingers. That's why they call it relative motion. It's in relation to the other fingers. You can also make a relative motion splint. You can 3D print them. And there are files that are free online, and you can manipulate the files. You can make them bigger and smaller. And also, once you print it, you can put it in hot water and stretch it. So it works really well. See, it's about 15 degrees more extension, and it's actually pretty comfortable. This printed in 6 minutes, and it used hardly any filament. And this is the thermoplastic version of the relative motion. And remember, if you want extension, like for a boutonniere, then you're going to have that digit in flexion. And if you want flexion, you're going to have that digit in extension. So they're called relative motion flexion or relative motion extension. Another alternative to thermoplastics for anyone who doesn't have access to them is just good old plaster of Paris. Yeah, there's a lot of downsides to plaster of Paris. It takes forever to heat up. You can't, I mean, to get solid, you can't get it wet. But it's certainly an option if you don't have access to thermoplastics. Um, Anything that's in a medical catalog is going to be a lot more expensive. And if you look in some of our medical catalogs for this this cupping, small cupping thing that we do for scars, they're expensive, maybe 50 US dollars. And what this is it's a snake bite kit. So it's a kit that you would use to extract venom. And they sell it at Walmart and places like that for about 10 or $15. So it's the same product. Another thing, the tubing that we use for outriggers, you can just use straws that you get online, and you can just heat them with the heat gun, and they work great, a lot less expensive. For built-up handles, there's tubing out there that's used for insulation. And so I was looking at this, I Googled it, and I think it's really interesting. So here's Walmart's version of the tubing that you can use for razors and spoons and things, $10. And then here's one in a rehabilitation specific for $32. So again, you're paying 3 times the price to get something that's medical. We all use a lot of, we like to use the silicone for scars. It's a real go-to thing. This silicone from Roleanne is $50 for half a pound, basically. This is $22 for a pound. So again, four times less, more expensive for this. The thing about this silicone, all three of these products are silicone. They're the same thing. This silicone takes longer to set up. But what you can do is you can put it in a little cup of warm water for about 3 minutes, and that really accelerates the process. So put it in there for about 3 minutes, then put it on the patient, and it'll harden pretty quickly. The other thing is you can use silicone caulk. It's silicone. It's the same thing. You want to get the one that's pure silicone, and some of them have additives. So make sure you get the one that's pure silicone. And again, you don't want it to cure on a patient's hand. So once it's dry and hardened, it's fine, it's safe, but you don't want to put it on in its liquid form. Plus, silicone takes forever to get hard. So one thing I do is you could put it on a piece of tape, and you could even have like a whole big thing of this in your clinic. And then when a patient comes in, you could cut it in the how you want to cut it, and then just take it off the tape. So I've got a thin layer of silicone on this tape, and then you could take it off the tape and then just put it on the patient's hand. The purpose of the silicone for the scar, there's two things. One is just the pressure on the scar, but the other is that the silicone deprives the scar of oxygen, and it promotes lysis, which is the taking away versus synthesis. So again, we can achieve that with this, and it's a lot less expensive. Um, we see a lot of children who have uh, syndactyly releases when I do my medical missions, and the doctors always want us to make splints, and we make some hard splint that has the ridges. And really, these things work great, just the toe spreaders from a pedicure, because we only need to separate them proximally, right? They're not going to come together distally. And someone said, well, how do you keep it on? But it stays on. Once you put it on, it stays on and it's very comfortable. Again, very inexpensive. I don't know if you guys see people who have burn scar releases on their necks. This is something that I saw a journal article about. They took surgical, like tubing, and wrapped it in stockinette. So, an alternative to that is, you can get rolls of stockinette. They're pretty inexpensive. And then I just cut a piece of foam and put it in the stockinette, and then you can put it in the back and you can just tie it like that for a post-op burn scar. Any package that I get, the foam, I keep I keep the foam. We're as OTs, I think we tend to look at things and think, how can I use that? So anything that comes to my house, I keep. I know I'm going to try to repurpose it. This was some packing foam, and this is just the air uh, foam. And again, you could put it inside of stockinette too as a way to keep the neck up. This is just a 5-gallon bucket. There are millions of them around, and it could be adapted to it for a seat for a child. Just some other adaptations that you can use for a sock aid, um, for a straw holder, even for a little walker for a child. I'm not sure how many people have access to 3D printers, but it's a great, alternative to thermoplastics. It's inexpensive. When I make 3D printed things, I print them flat, and then I heat them up and mold them. So here's flat, and then I just put it in hot water and mold it. Um, the advantage of doing that is if you can print it like this, but it would require a lot of supports, and you're going to use extra material. Um, Another thing that you could do is you could design your own splints. So I find these things for free online, the files. But if you're really smart and you know about CAD, which is computer assisted design, you could design those splints yourselves. A third option that some people do is they'll pay a vendor to make those files available, and then they print those files themselves. But I really think nobody's going to do that anymore. I think people are going to either use free ones online, or people are going to develop the skills to make those files themselves. And I think that you guys, and especially the younger folks that I'm talking to, I think you're going to really get into this technology, and you're going to learn those computer skills, and you're going to start designing your own orthotics. And what I would like to see is a world where you design those and then you put them online for free. And, we can't stop the war in Ukraine, and we can't stop earthquakes from happening. But what we can do as hand therapists is we can help the child who lost his hand in a bomb, or the young person whose hand was crushed um, in the earthquake. And we can use our skills. That's what we can give. And I hope that when as you design these things, that you'll put them online for free. And you could do it. You could design a new splint, and you could name it after yourself. You can even print your initials on it if you want. That's how you could get your fame. Um, and you can print prosthetics and stuff, and you think about these children whose hands were blown off in missiles, and we could make a difference in their lives. And I hope that you'll consider when you design those things that you'll make them available to people for free. So again, this is what the orthosis looks like flat when I print it, and this is it when I after I melt it and mold it. It's pretty easy. So if you think about people in developing countries, they're probably not going to have access to Velcro. So these are two different designs. Again, I didn't design them, they were free online. And see, this one has kind of a loop, and this one has kind of hooks. And I think about people in developing countries that we could make available, the 3D printing files, but they might not have Velcro. So this one with the loops, the hooks, is so you could take just a shoestring and come around and do this for people who don't have access to Velcro. And this one, again, it has the loops, but you could use less Velcro because, you could put this end on and you can just staple the two pieces together and you would have the sharp parts away from the patient. So again, you're using less Velcro. You could even maybe do a ribbon too, or another, just a piece of fabric to come through. I know you guys probably like these ovalate splints. I think everybody does. They're great. My big complaint about these is I see a lot of people with swan neck. And what we need to do with swan neck is we need to block out the last 30 degrees of extension. And that way they won't pop, the lateral bands won't pop. But the problem with the ovalates is you can't bend these. They are a high temperature. And so no matter if you put them in hot water or the heat gun, you can't bend them. But when you 3D print them, which again, so inexpensive, the 3D printed one, see, I can print it and it's blocked me out at about 30 and they can bend. So I think it's even a better option and very inexpensive. I also have been playing with one for the thumb because the key on CMC OA is to not let the MP collapse. So we really don't even have to immobilize the CMC joint. We want that to not collapse. So I've been playing around with this design. You can make them bigger and smaller to melt it. See, I can put it in warm water and melt it so that it's going to keep that MP at 30 and keep that MP from collapsing and hopefully stay in place so that you don't need something down here. Again, it's a work in progress. This kind of shows you the process. If you were going to uh, actually print them in 3D custom, you would first have to scan the finger, and then you would have to, from that scan, you would have to develop a computer uh, design, and then you would 3D print it. So I think it's a lot better to just print them and melt them, at least at my skill level. You guys will probably advance past that pretty quickly. So the materials are okay. So again, thermoplastics many times are unavailable in countries and they're expensive. And the 3D printers are actually inexpensive. And it could be that you in your city, maybe one clinic has a 3D printer and they just print them and make them available to other people. Um, Again, they're very inexpensive. Um, uh, Patients, studies have shown that patients are very accepting to 3D printed orthotics. Uh, the most common filament that we use in 3D printers is this PLA, and it's plant-based and it's biodegradable. Um, the rolls are inexpensive. There are different kinds of 3D filament, and I'm still learning about 3D printing, and I would be glad to help anyone who wants to get started in it. Um, the most common that people use is the PLA, and again, it's plant-based and safe. And the fumes, there are no fumes really. In fact, it sort of smells kind of sweet when it's cooking. Then another, so this is PLA. So this is PETG, this one. I don't know if you can see my arrow. And the reason that I bought this is it's a little more flexible. And what I wanted, once you print with the PLA, you can't bend it because it'll break. It's more plastic. And this is a little bit more flexible. The downside to this is that it takes a little bit longer to print. And it does have some fumes that are not safe. So you would want it to be ventilated, just slightly not safe. So you would want that to have some ventilation where you did that. The ABS is flexible and a good material, but the fumes are toxic, and you definitely would need that in a very well vented place away from patients. Again, I was looking for something more flexible so it would drape a little bit better because we're used to our thermoplastics really coming around and fitting really nicely. So I ordered this PTU. This is the one on the bottom. But the problem with this is something that you would see like with a cell phone case. It's way too floppy. So it's does not work at all. And unfortunately, I bought a whole roll of it. Um, but anyway, I say if you're going to get started, start with an inexpensive printer and start with PLA. And I would be glad to help you with what little bit I know. So if anybody has any questions, just let me know.
¿Alguien tiene alguna pregunta para Mary? I think there's no questions, Mary. Thank you so much. If there's some, I think you can like help us in the chat, like write it down, but no one's asking. So thank
Okay.
you so much.
I'll put my email in the chat. Happy to help anyone. And thank you so much for including me. And I wish the best for the people in Venezuela. My heart aches for them.
Ok, muchas gracias, Mary, por su participación. Ha sido muy importante la colaboración y por compartir su experiencia con todos nosotros. Eh, Inmediatamente procedemos a la siguiente ponente, que es la terapista física Rosa Rodríguez, con el tema fisioterapia dermatofuncional. Tienes la palabra, Rosa. Bienvenida.
¿Ya me escuchan? ¿Se ve ahí la diapositiva?
Sí,
Ya.
te escuchamos bien.
Perfecto. Bueno, el día de hoy yo les voy a hablar un poquito de lo que es fisioterapia dermatofuncional, cómo es que lo hemos ido nosotros adaptando a lo que es miembro superior, porque la mano pues no se trabaja igual que cualquier otra parte del cuerpo, porque cambia en cuanto hasta la composición del colágeno que tenemos en la piel. Entonces, vamos a empezar. Bueno, ¿qué es la fisioterapia dermatofuncional? Pues entiéndase que es una rama en la fisioterapia que nos va a ayudar a prevenir, rehabilitarse y rehabilitar todo lo que es el sistema tegumentario, que es la piel, que es nuestro órgano más grande. Y bueno, todo esto para poder tratar, reparar, restaurar y buscar la funcionalidad sin dejar al lado todo lo que es el aspecto estético y la calidad de vida del paciente. Entender que no, el área dermatofuncional no es solo el área de cirugía plástica, entiéndase que todo paciente que se somete a una cirugía debe de llevar un proceso de rehabilitación dermatofuncional después de una cirugía. Bueno, la piel. Tenemos que la piel, lo que les comentaba, pues es distinta. La piel de la mano va a tener